Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Come to the Cape by Emmy Hilton. And this is presented by Hitsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Without hesitation, Melissa shoved her hand into the half-eaten bag of Hershey's Kisses. There you go, kiddo. She tossed one over her shoulder to her 5-year-old daughter Ellie in the back seat of her sensible sedan. Sure, she'd pay for it later, but for a few seconds she basked in the beauty of silence. Then she grabbed a few for herself, unwrapping and popping them into her mouth in rapid succession. Afterward, she balled up the foil wrappers into a tidy little pile in her cup holder. She wished she could blame the half-eaten bag on Ellie, but the kisses were her personal kryptonite. They had been since she was a kid. She used to eat them on the back porch with her brother, Andrew, and his best friend, Luke. Luke used to buy a big bag enough to share from the corner convenience store when they got hankering for a treat. Andrew was always good about letting her stick around and hang out with them, even though she was 2 years younger. It became their thing, Hershey's Kisses and late-night summer chats. The night that Melissa's boyfriend dumped her in the 9th grade, Andrew and Luke bought her a bag, and they all ate the chocolates together while she cried. The boys managed to cheer her up by slingshotting the foil wrappers across the porch, trying to hit the lights across the railing. Even now, she couldn't eat one without smiling from the memory. As she peered out the passenger side window, she watched the mile markers fade into a sea of green behind her. Ellie hollered from the back seat for another Hershey's Kiss, and Melissa catapulted one to her in a swift movement any baseball player would be proud of. Ellie captured it in her tiny fist. Her blue eyes matched Melissa's own, but Ellie's blonde hair differed from her light brown locks. Years prior, she used to spend a fortune on highlights. She tried not to dwell on yet one more thing she'd had to give up after her ex-husband cheated on her. It's best not to focus on that past. Today, they had Hershey's Kisses. Melissa cheered when Ellie caught the piece of chocolate. She caught her smile through the rear view mirror. Winning. By now, the crowded streets of Boston were far away, and they inched their way closer to the calm, meandering roads of Cape Cod. In the few minutes of quiet, her mind wandered to the conversation she'd had with her mom 2 months prior. Come here to the Cape, her mom had said over speakerphone as Melissa munched on a chip during her lunch break. Lunch break, more like a few short minutes where she attempted to shovel food into her mouth while answering emails. The Cape? Melissa repeated. I don't know. She mulled over the idea. It wasn't the worst way to spend her upcoming 3-month sabbatical. Cape Cod had always held a special place in her heart. She'd grown up on the Cape. Located only an hour-and-a-half drive from Boston, where she lived and worked, it could be the perfect way to spend her break. Lack of time and energy to plan an extravagant 3-month trip made the Cape a viable option. Also, where else would she take a 5-year-old who preferred parks and beaches to cathedrals and museums? But one thing held true. She needed this sabbatical more than anything. The past 5 years had been one long, hazy fog as a single mom. Every midnight feeding, every cold and flu, every tantrum, she handled it on her own. And boy, was she tired. The bone-dead, can you die from lack of sleep type of tired. You probably can't, by the way. She'd Googled it. The sandy beaches of her childhood called her name. Sand between her toes with nowhere to go sounded like a dream. Then she'd remembered the bike rides, the saltwater taffy, and the clam chowder. Most of all, she'd thought of Luke. Yes, come, her mom had continued. Ellie could play with Cole. You'd get a break. Plus, Dad and I are headed on that European cruise all summer. We'd feel better not leaving the house empty. You can house sit for us. Oh, well, she'd ripped off the foil top of her yogurt and shoved a spoonful into her mouth. A bit dribbled down her chin and splattered onto her shirt. Melissa had desperately glanced around for something to wipe it off, and spotting the box of tissues, had yanked one out. When you phrase it like that, she wiped the yogurt off her chin and then dabbed at her shirt. Useless, the stain remained. You can't refuse it, stated her mom matter-of-factly. So come to the Cape. You know, everything is more magical here in the summer. And it's about time Ellie saw where you grew up. She's 5, and she's only spent a few weekends here. It was true. Traveling with a newborn and toddler, even for a relatively short drive, had been intimidating for her. Most of the time, Melissa's parents traveled to her to lessen her stress. With Ellie a little older now, she hoped for her daughter to spend more time on the Cape. She crumpled the tissue and tossed it into the trash. Right. You have nowhere else to go, unless you've piled up cash that I don't know about. I know you make decent money, but I also know it all gets eaten up with rent and childcare. Yikes, Melissa winced. Way to go straight for the jugular. You know I'm right. Melissa contemplated finishing her yogurt, but decided against it. She tossed the half-eaten carton into the trash can. It's true that living in Boston isn't cheap, and I should probably put my extra money toward my retirement and not some lavish vacation Ellie won't even appreciate at this age. She pondered her mom's proposal for a moment, then continued. I'm thinking coming to the Cape is a nice idea. We'll watch the house, you'll go on your trip of a lifetime, and I'll get a much-needed break from work. Her job as a software engineer offered a sabbatical every 4 years as part of their benefits package, a nice perk Melissa needed to cash in on, especially since her ex had yet to pay a dime of child support. So the Cape it was. Melissa had ended the call and spent the next few weeks making the necessary preparations for her sabbatical. Then, when she'd packed up her car with their suitcases, she'd practically hummed to herself. 3 months with nothing to do. Come to the Cape, the sea breeze whispered to her. How much longer, Mommy? Ellie asked, interrupting her thoughts. Melissa flashed her gaze to the rearview mirror. Ellie stared out the passenger side window and ran her finger down it, leaving long, chocolatey streaks. Not much longer. Melissa readjusted her grip on the steering wheel. We're almost to the Cape. What's the Cape? Ellie removed her chocolate-coated, sticky fingers from the window. She promptly stuck them into her mouth and licked some stray chocolate off, but somehow it only smeared further across her face. How in the world had Ellie managed to make such a mess with only 2 Hershey's Kisses? They weren't even big. The Cape is short for Cape Cod, where Nana and Papa live. Remember, I told you we're going to stay there for the summer while Mom takes some time off work. Nana and Papa are gallivanting around Europe, so it'll just be us at their house. We'll go to the beach every day, take bike rides, and walk to town for ice cream. It is going to be awesome. Uncle Andrew and Aunt Olivia live in Cape Cod too, so you'll get to play with Cole. Ellie snapped her head forward at the mention of her cousin. Promise? She asked earnestly. Promise, Melissa made an X motion of her heart. Then she caught the wide smile on Ellie's face. Her heart melted a little. Cole and Ellie were only a few months apart, and they loved playing together. Luckily, Andrew and his wife Olivia were good about coming up to Boston to visit, but it had still been a while since the kids had seen each other. The tension between her shoulder blades loosened. She rolled the windows down a few inches, letting the tangy breeze drifting off the ocean filter through the cab of the car. With each mile away from Boston, her stress dissipated a bit more. They would be okay, she knew. The sabbatical came at the perfect time. Melissa had 3 whole months to relax, regroup, and revitalize herself, and spend time with Ellie before she went to kindergarten in the fall. She hoped it would give her the break she needed. She'd enjoyed her work, but she had spent the past years torn in a million different directions. Andrew, who was the local dentist, promised to bring over Cole a bunch and even offered Melissa and Ellie free dental cleanings, which didn't sound like much, but she hadn't had the time to visit the dentist in at least a year, and a crown on the back molar was giving her trouble. 20 minutes later, Melissa pulled into her parents' driveway. From the back porch, you could see the Atlantic Ocean, and a sandy trail of beach ran from one side of the home out to the water. Picturesque, absolutely, but come winter, this place was colder than cold. Just thinking about all those winters here as a child made her shiver. Today, though, it was a breezy 70. Yeah, come to the Cape, but only in the summer, she thought. As soon as she parked the car, Ellie unbuckled herself, scrambled out of her booster seat, and shot out the car. She bounded up the front steps. Melissa opened her own door and shouted, Ellie, come back, honey. Remember, Nana and Papa aren't home, and I have the key. Plus, you need to help carry things inside. I can't do it all on my own. An audible groan was followed up by the dragging of light-up sneakers across the creaky wood of the porch and back down the stairs. It made her smile. Parenting alone wasn't easy. Her ex-husband Grant left her when she was pregnant. He'd never even laid eyes on Ellie, which meant every parenting decision was on her. Many times she wondered if she was doing anything right. Then, every so often, Melissa felt a pinch of confirmation that Ellie was going to turn out fine. She wished she could give Ellie a dad, but the dating pool of single men in their 30s was pretty limited. After a few very rocky dates, she gave up years ago. Her life consisted of work and Ellie. Dating, yeah, that wasn't happening. A future husband for her and stepdad for Ellie wasn't likely in the cards for them, not when Melissa's weekends were spent in sweatpants, taking her daughter to places she couldn't during the week. Melissa rounded the car and popped open the trunk. Ellie arrived beside her as she unloaded a few of the roller suitcases onto the driveway. One attempted to roll away, and she stopped it with her foot and gently pushed it toward the front lawn, where it stopped in place. Ellie peered up at her with wide blue eyes and chocolate-smeared cheeks. Can we go to the beach today? Melissa reached into her purse and retrieved a wipe. She motioned for Ellie to come closer. She wiped her face with it. Ouch, Ellie whined. Oh, you'll live. Once her face was clean enough to be passable, Melissa wadded up the wipe and shoved it back into her purse. There, much better. She refocused on unloading the trunk. So can we go to the beach today? Ellie clasped her hands together in a plea. Please? Yes, we can go once we get unpacked. Melissa unloaded the last suitcase and closed the trunk. And we're here for 3 months. We'll get to go to the beach every day. Woohoo! Ellie pumped her little fist, then used her fingers to swipe messy blonde hair from her eyes. Dang it, she'd forgotten to wipe her hands off. Mother of the Year, everyone. Melissa, a voice came from behind her. Hold on there, girl. Melissa swiveled around. Her eyes widened as they landed on a man crouched down, rubbing the back of his mini poodle. Luke, as in her brother's best friend from high school. Luke, as in the guy who she'd loved so fiercely for so long that the very sight of him made her pulse simmer and her heart gallop. Yep, that Luke. And he looked good. He still had his full head of messy dark locks. His shoulders somehow looked broader than she'd remembered, like maybe he had started going to CrossFit. And somehow the wrinkles around his eyes made him look wiser and more distinguished rather than older. Luke? Melissa instinctively smoothed out the top of her hair. Is that you? Why, oh, why had she worn this tattered t-shirt today? She couldn't remember the last time she'd washed her hair, and it showed. Of all those times she had dreamed of seeing him again in the flesh, this was not how she pictured it. In her daydreams, she was wearing her sexiest outfit and a full face of makeup that made her the dark eyes under her eyes disappear. This couldn't be happening. She already had an imaginary strike against her in a game she only played with herself. It's me, all right, he flashed her a smile and continued to pet his dog between the ears. Ellie tugged on Melissa's hand. Mom, you promised we'd go to the beach. Melissa's eyes stayed glued to Luke. She almost felt that if she looked away, he wouldn't be real. We will, sweetie. Give me a second. Melissa squeezed Ellie's hand. Luke, it's good to see you again. Luke gave his dog one last pat and stood. Likewise. His 6'3" frame towered over Melissa's average height and slender build. Why did it look like his skin glistened? Had his jaw always been that sharp? What type of hair product did he use to get that perfect, messy but trying look? The questions came in rapid succession, and she tried her best to shut them off and concentrate on holding the conversation. He scratched at the scruff along his jaw. Ender mentioned you were coming to town for the summer. His dog barked, and he made a motion with his free hand. The dog obediently sat back on its hind legs. This can't be Ellie. I can't believe how much she's grown since the last time I saw her. Melissa glanced down at Ellie, giving her a crooked smile. I know, right? Kids do that to you, but she's 5 now. Then, feeling brave, she met his dazzling hazel eyes. Yes, Ellie smiled shyly and held up her hand with fingers spread widely. I'm 5. I'm going into kindergarten. My, you don't say, Luke said, winking at Melissa. Heat grew in her middle, so nothing had changed. Melissa still had the hots for Luke, and it seemed she was still nothing more than Andrew's sister. A girl he maybe flirted with but never asked out. Jeez, she sounded like she was back in high school.